Hello, and welcome to a brand new day of free-to-play here on Magic the Gathering Arena. Get the dish on the latest with me, Lord Rumfish. So we're going into March of the Machine. I'm going to talk about the limited commons and uncommons, and this is to familiarize all of us with the set, get an idea of what the themes are, maybe start to pick out what the best draft archetypes and some of the best commons and uncommons are. I'm not going to give number rankings at this time because I think it's a little early to do that. So all that being said, let's go ahead and jump in. Aki Scrap Jumper. So this is a 1 mana Phyrexian Goblin, 1/1. Pay a red and a colorless, tap, sacrifice an artifact or land, draw a card. So this can play a little bit into the Aristocrats theme that Black is doing, but it doesn't sacrifice creatures. So sacrificing lands, that's just kind of a late game play. You want to make sure you've got all of your mana online first before you start sacking lands. Sacrificing artifacts can have a little bit of a crossover though. You can sacrifice incubator tokens or equipment, or there's also a black fox, a Phyrexian fox. It's a 3-drop in black. It drains the opponent for 2 when it dies. So if you're in black-red, then you can have, this can give you a different angle of sacrificing things. Doesn't do creatures. Does do lands, draws you cards. And even if you're just in mono-red, the ability to, exchange out your lands late game means that this isn't the worst card to draw in the late game. Start just sacking lands, churning through your deck, trying to find the spells. Yeah, seems pretty alright. Doesn't have a big board impact or anything, and you need to have a board presence before you start sacrificing a bunch of stuff. So whether you want to run this in your deck or not depends on if you have fuel for it. I could see maybe a 1-of in just about any red deck so that you have a 1-drop, and in the late game you have a way to dig yourself out of a flood of too many lands. If you're not in the archetype, though, if you're not trying to sack things, then I don't think you especially want this card. Beamtown Beatstick. So this is 1 red. It's a common artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has menace. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player or battle, create a treasure token. Equip for 2. Equipping for 2 is really not that expensive. +1/+0 and menace. The power boost is welcome. Menace is also very welcome. That makes it much more likely that you'll 2-for-1 the opponent on blocks, or at least be able to attack in with that power boost and forcing 2 blockers. And the treasure tokens could really snowball the game for you. Getting a mana advantage quickly is very nice. Also gives you a way of potentially ramping or color fixing in red. Overall, I think this is a solid piece of equipment. I think it's pretty good. I think it's very playable. Alright, we're going to stick with the commons and uncommons here. Burning Sun's Fury. Red and a colorless, common, instant, has Convoke, so it could cost 0. Up to 2 target creatures, each gain +2/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. This is a pretty good trick. Yeah, you can play it on the opponent's turn when it looks like you're tapped out. Change the combat math on blockers. This can also pump up your little guys to the point that it's maybe nasty trades on the opponent's end if they want to try to get in the way, or if they let it through, it's an extra 4 damage to their face. The haste could matter as well, right? You can tap creatures to pay for this convoke cost, and if you need your mana, then there's more options for how to give haste to the things that just came down. If you want to take aggressive lines in this format, this is probably a good card for the deck. I can't say with certainty that this is necessarily a slow format. I think it is. I think I'm looking at a slow format here, but that's not to say that red is the slow part of it. Red might be the color that finds ways to break the stalemate and get in for damage. We'll see. Okay, coming in hot. 1 red, instant target creature gets +1/+0, gains first strike till end of turn, scry 1. I think this is a functional reprint. I forget the name of the other card though. So this is kind of a low impact combat trick. First strike could, blow something out. It's not useless, but I also don't love it. I don't love combat tricks in general, and this one, the first strike is nice, but +1 power, scry 1, I'm not that big of a fan. Fearless Scald. So this is a red and 4 colorless, uncommon, 3/2 Dwarf Berserker. Has double strike and backup 1. So this could be a 4/3 double striker for 5, which is pretty scary. It can also come down as a 3/2 double striker for 5, pump another creature by 1 point, and give it double strike until end of turn, which is also pretty scary. If the thing that you give double strike has menace or flying or trample, this could be a really aggressive line. And then the Scald itself being a 3-power double striker, that's nothing to sneeze at. If you take this Scald and you equip it up with like this Beamtown Beat Stick, right, then it would be a 4-power double striker with menace, and that would make it really hard to block. And if you let it through, it would deal 8 damage. I think this is pretty good. I think there are ways to take advantage of what the Fearless Scald has to offer. I'm pretty impressed at the size of this creature having double strike. Yeah, I think this is dangerous. I think it'd be a pretty good card. Alright, Furnace Gremlin. Red and 1. It is a 1/2 uncommon Phyrexian Gremlin. You can pay a red and a colorless. It gets +1/+0 until end of turn. And when it dies, you incubate X, where X is its power. Okay, so this creature is going to be good in like a red-black Aristocrats deck. Black has a lot of sacrifice outlets. Like it could sacrifice this Gremlin and incubate 3, right? If you got the completed Huntmaster. And when that happens, you're also going to incubate because of the Gremlin's ability. That's piling a lot of value on. So I think Furnace Gremlin's going to be a pretty good card in this format, just on its own. At the point that it's 4 mana, it threatens to be a 3/2 attacker that then leaves behind a 3-power incubator token that you can transform. Yeah, I like it. I think this card's going to be pretty decent. It'll be especially good in Aristocrats. I think it's playable on its own though. Furnace Toast Charger. This is a red and 5 colorless. It's common, 5/5 Phyrexian Giant. Has haste. Also has Mountain Cycling 2. So when it's in your hand, you can discard it for 2 colorless, go find a mountain. I like all of these. I like these basic land cyclers. So 5/5 with haste for 6, that's good. That's a good creature. Can crash in right away. It's got a good body. You know, relevant to the board state at 6 mana. The mountain cycling can make sure you're hitting your land drops. Can also fix your mana if you haven't found red yet. This isn't my favorite one of these creatures, but I still like it. It's much more aggressive than some of the other ones. Maybe red's the color that can make aggression work in this format. White Blue Knights also looks pretty aggressive. It's like got a tempo build. Okay. Yeah, I like all of these cycling creatures, basic land cyclers. Furnace Rains. Red and 2 colorless, uncommon sorcery. Gain control of a creature until end of turn, untap it. It gains haste, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or battle, make a treasure token. This is a pretty good threaten effect. So if they let it through, and they're very likely to, either that or they'll throw a little chump blocker in its way. Because they don't want to kill their own creature. But they might if you have a way to sacrifice it. And that's the thing with red-black here. If you're in Aristocrats, right, and you're in Rakdos colors, red and black, then there are lots of sacrifice outlets with your black cards to never give the opponent's creature back to them when you cast Furnace Rains. I think that's going to be probably a pretty strong archetype. It can get you in some damage. It can also get you value. Yeah, you might just sacrifice it to drain the opponent for 1, something like that. But if you sacrifice their creature to incubate 3, then not only did you slap them in the face, but you're building long-term value out of that play. I think it's going to be a pretty strong deck archetype. Alright, Hanger Scrounger. Oh, and if you're not in that deck archetype, usually you don't want to play threaten effects. Because it's just a one-shot deal of damage. So if you're not sacrificing their creature, if you're just stealing it for a turn and handing it back, then I don't think it's that great. But if you're in that deck, then it's like removal and damage, and then it's pretty great. Alright, Hanger Scrounger. Red and 2 colorless, common, 2/1, dwarf pilot. It's got backup 1. Whenever this creature becomes tapped, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. So whenever you tap it, you get a Rummage. You can discard to draw, and it's a May ability. So, normally that's when it attacks, but also Convoke exists in the set. So if you got a Convoke deck, then you'll get these Rummages. And this could either be a 3/2 with this ability, or you can, send its counter elsewhere. Maybe swing in with something, get a Rummage right away. And then you've still got the Scrounger, which you can Convoke. You could trade it as a 2/1 in combat. It's, a decent blocker. Not the best, but decent. And help dig through your deck if you got a Convoke deck. It seems okay. I think it's reasonable but not exciting. Karsus Depth Guard. Red and 2 colorless, common. It's a 4/3 Viashino Warrior. Viashino are cool. They're like lizard folk people. I don't know that much about them in Magic lore. So 4/3 Defender for 3. As long as its power is 5 or greater, it can attack as though it didn't have Defender. Okay. Karsus Depth Guard, it's going to play well with backup. It's also going to play well with the equipment that's in this format. And the equipment I've seen, I like. There's good equipment. It equips for a low price. It's not expensive to get it onto the battlefield. Right, like in Red, we just looked at +1/+0 and Menace. That would turn Karsus, and it would, make treasure if you connect. That would turn Karsus Depth Guard from a 4/3 Defender into a 5/3 Menace. Sounds pretty good to me. And I think this is going to be maybe a slower format. That's not to say Red's going to be the slow color. I don't think a 4/3 Defender for 3 is the worst thing you could be doing. You have time to find your backup, your equipment, to turn him into a threat. I don't think you need to feel pressured to do it right away. If you drop him down as a defender and then, the night deck plays like a creature and it pumps up to a 4/4 vigilance and they attack, I don't think you would mind trading at that point. I think you'd be okay with making that trade with the Depth Guard. Yeah, I think this is a pretty fair deal. Might be much better than it looks, in fact. I think there are going to be plenty of ways to turn this on. Alright. Lithomantic Barrage. 1 red, sorcery, uncommon, can't be countered. Deals 1 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Deals 5 damage instead if the target is white and or blue. So, this is powerful tech in Constructed to sideboard in against mono blue. Can't be countered means that it ignores the ward on Tolarian Terror. Right, you just cast it, target the terror, decline to pay the ward tries to counter it, it can't be countered. So Lithomantic Barrage, ignores ward, it ignores their counter spells, so it forces them to bounce their creature or phase it out or something. And it does so for 1 mana. Now, it's a sorcery, it'd be better if it was an instant speed, but what do you want? It's 1 mana. It's a really good sideboard card for that matchup. In Limited, you don't know if you're up against white or blue. So if you main deck this, then it's a coin flip. A 1 mana sorcery that can't be countered that deals 1 damage to a creature or planeswalker. Sounds very low impact. So if you're doing a best of 3 draft, solid sideboard material, if you're up against white-blue, this could be a great removal spell. But if you're not best of 3 drafting, then I don't think you can main deck this. I think the board impact is just too low if you don't know for sure what the opponent's playing. Marauding Dreadship. Red and 2 colorless. It's a common 4/1 artifact vehicle. So this vehicle has haste. When it enters the battlefield, you incubate 2, and it has crew of 2. So if you had 5 mana, it could crew itself. Right? You could transform the incubator token and crew it up right away, come in with haste. It's interesting. I feel like there's going to be a lot of ground stalling happens in this format. The Dread Ship will probably trade with something if you come across, right? 4 power is quite a bit. But it won't be good if they have first strike or double strike. There are a couple of those creatures floating around. And you won't feel very good about it if it trades with a 1-drop or a 2/2 incubator token or something. I think the Marauding Dread Ship's actually better as a blocker, probably a lot of the time. Overall, I still like it. It represents 6 power spread across 2 bodies. It makes a great blocker, and if you can sneak it in, it'll be a good attacker. You just got to find a moment when the opponent's open. I think it's playable. Yeah, I think this is an okay card. Anything that puts 6 power and 3 toughness onto the boards, that's reasonable. You can pay the mana in installments, right? Get this down for 3, can crew it right away to attack or block. Later on, you get the 2/2 incubator. Seems like a fine card. Not amazing, but fine. Right, Mirren Bane Splitter. So this is kind of a callback to Bone Splitter, I think. 1 red, common, artifact equipment, has flash. When it ETBs, you attach it to a creature you control. The equipped creature gets +2/+0, and you can equip this for 3. I think this is a pretty great piece of equipment. Flashing it in as a combat trick, I love it, sounds good. Equipped for 3 to get +2 power is also not too high of a price to pay. So it's 1 red at instant speed to immediately affect the board. It sticks around, and 3 mana to move it when it gives +2 power. I don't hate that either. 3 is starting to be a little bit expensive as an equip cost, but it's got a bigger board impact than some of the little cheap pieces of equipment we've looked at. So I think if you were going to go for some kind of a Voltron deck, right, like there's a blue creature at common that has hexproof. It would be interesting to grab a bunch of equipment and auras if you've got several hexproof creatures. Give him flying with the blue aura, start piling equipment onto him, give him menace, boost his power, and suddenly you've got a heck of a threat and the opponent just can't target it. I don't know if that's actually an archetype in this format, but it's just something I noticed you could do. I think this is a good piece of equipment. I think it'll see plenty of play. Right. Onake Javelineer, a red and 4 colorless, common. It's a 5/4 ogre spirit. Has reach. And you can tap it to deal 2 damage to target player or battle. This seems pretty great. Yeah, I like this. 5/4 with reach is a heck of a body, and you can just tap it to shock the opponent. I mean, that's not the worst clock. It doesn't require combat damage or anything to do that. Also, this is great at flipping battles for you. Just tap it at the end of the opponent's turn, shock a battle, keep going. Yeah, I feel like this is going to be a pretty strong role player in this format. There have been some formats that were faster where they recently, just in recent sets, they've started printing large red reach creatures. Some of the formats have been pretty fast and they haven't seen as much play. But this creature, I think, is going to be pretty good in this format. I think the Javelineer is going to be a way to close out the game. and you can be proactive with it about, flipping your battles over. Pretty neat. Yeah, I like it. All right, Ral's reinforcements, red and a colorless, common, sorcery. Create 2 1/1 blue and red elemental creature tokens. So I think this card will be good in a Convoke deck. If you're kind of going for a Convoke archetype, then I think Ral's Reinforcements is the kind of card you want to play there to flood the board with creatures, so then you can get all the big Convoke spells off. If you're not in a Convoke deck, then I think this card is borderline unplayable. I think this format's going to lend itself to ground stalls, and in that situation, yeah, you're going to give yourself blockers, you're going to make your board go a little wider, but if you're not convoking with them... Okay, the other archetype I think this will go okay into is Aristocrats. Alright. So, Aristocrats definitely has uses for sacrificing 2 tokens, right? Completed Huntmaster can turn those into 3/3s. Give him a little time, give him a little mana. He'll turn this 2 power and toughness into 6 power and toughness. Just give him a little while. Okay, so Convoke deck and Aristocrats deck. I think those are the ones that want this card. Everyone else doesn't really. And could see constructed play. Yeah. There are spells decks where they like to go wide with tokens. Effects that, pump the team based on the number of instants and sorceries you've played, stuff like that. Alright, Ramosian Greatsword. Red and 4 colorless, uncommon, artifact equipment has Convoke. So, might not actually cost 5 mana. Equipped creature gets +3/+1 and has Trample. Equipped for 2. That is a cheap equip cost considering it gives +3/+1 and Trample. That's a big boost. So once you get this thing on the battlefield, that is a low equip cost to be moving this thing around. It gives a big board impact. And with Convoke, it might not be that hard to get on the battlefield. See, I think this is a pretty good payoff for a Convoke deck. For running cards like Ral's Reinforcements. Yeah, because this can make one of your little tokens even like a 4/2 Trampler. Let alone if you, stick this on something bigger like the Javelin here and make it like an 8/5 Trampler. This just impacts the board enormously. So, yeah, if you can get it down, it's going to be great. This card will not be as great if you can't convoke it easily into play. It would still be a very strong late game play for just about any deck. But the deck that can really make use of it's the Convoke deck. That's probably a more aggressive deck. Get a bunch of little creatures down early, then you make them big. Sounds pretty good. Alright, sticking on the commons and uncommons here, Redcap Heel Slasher. This is a red and 3 colorless. It's a common 2/3 Goblin Rogue. It's got first strike, and it's got backup 1. So, it's a common with first strike. Could come down as a 3/4 with first strike. That's pretty good. Alright, so we've seen some creatures that just have first strike and double strike in white and red. You might be able to relive the glory of the original Ravnica, play Boros, and make a wall of first strike that your opponent just can't attack into. It's also, it's got backup 1, so it could send away a point of power and toughness and give something else first strike until end of turn. That's, you know, that could be what you want. It's a more aggressive line. Help something attack in when it otherwise couldn't. Sneak some damage through. Then you still have a 2/3 first striker for 4, which is like a Naba bodyguard from Homelands. Anyway. Yeah, this is pretty good. I'm surprised that they're bringing back defensive first strike. I think the existence of defensive first strike in this format is making me wonder if it's another element that's going to make the format slower, like harder to attack into. I don't know. I think this card's pretty good. Creatures that can sit back on defense with first strike are pretty strong. A 3 power first striker for 4 is a heck of a thing. Heck of a thing. I'd say this is maybe a creature where you don't want to give away its counter, where you'd rather keep it on the red cap. Okay, I'll just keep going here. Scrappy Bruiser. Red and 3 colorless, uncommon. It's a 3/4 Raccoon Warrior. Whenever it attacks, up to 1 target attacking creature, which could be itself, gets +2/+0 and gains trample. Return that creature to its owner's hand at end of combat. So it's up to 1, so you don't have to do it. If you do, you must return it at end of combat. And this has to attack in order to give out the boost. So the Scrappy Bruiser has to risk itself in combat to get the bonus. So 3/4 for 4 is already a pretty solid body. Perfectly respectable. It can make itself a 5/4 Trampler, which would bounce. You can also bounce something and get more ETB value out of it, which I like. Yeah, I think this card's going to have roles to play in this format. It's a good enough blocker on its own. Not the worst attacker. And you can spread the love, make something else able to get in, and then if it lives, you can bounce it back, play it again, maybe get more value. Yeah, overall I like this. I think this could pair nicely with some high toughness creatures. You know, boost up their power, now they're pretty good attackers. Bounce them back. Like, there's the Demon for 5 in black. That drains the opponent for 2, or it can add or subtract loyalty from battles. If you paired that up with the Scrappy Bruiser, it'd be a 5/5 attacker, and then you'd bounce it back and get its ETB triggers all over again. I think there are things to do with this card. As I said, a 3/4 for 4 is fine. So, well, I like it alright. Searing Barb. It's a red and 2 colorless, common sorcery. Deals 2 damage to any target. If it's a creature, it can't block this turn. Incubate 1. So it reads pretty aggressively. You know, you could kill a target, or if you can't kill it, you can make it unable to block. You get a little tiny incubator token. But this can do some other things. It can burn the opponent's face to win the game. You know, if they get down to a low life. Could damage a planeswalker. Can also potentially flip a battle. I think if you can use this to flip a battle, that's probably one of the best uses. I mean, you know, maybe you can kill like a 3/2 flyer or something with it, and that'd be pretty good too. I think 2 damage for 3 mana is a little bit underwhelming. I like that you get an incubator token. So I think this card's usable, but I feel like it's not the best removal. I think it's maybe not hitting the things that you'd really like it to hit. If you're using it to flip battles, then I think it might be at its best doing that. And it will still have all the other functionality of the card tacked on. If you don't have battles to flip, then I think this card may just be kind of so-so. Not super impressed. Shatter the Source. Red and 5 colorless, common, instant, has Convoke. So, might not cost 6, right? Might be able to tap some creatures. Choose one. It deals 6 damage to target creature, planeswalker, or battle. Or it can destroy an artifact. So this is definitely like a Convoke payoff. It's a very strong piece of removal if you can get its mana cost down to a reasonable spot. But I will say I feel like this is a slower format. I don't know if Red wants to play the slow game. But I was already saying, 6 mana removal in black that does Incubate 3 might be a good playable card. If that's the case, you might not have to Convoke this in order to see the value on it. You might have the time to cast it for 6. I know that sounds crazy. But this format is not Phyrexia All Will Be One. I think this is going to be slower. So between the Convoke and the fact that it just has a good board impact, 6 damage is going to kill most things. It's going to kill most creatures, kill most planeswalkers, and kill most battles. And it's got the functionality of destroying an artifact as well. I think this card is better than it looks, at least for limited. It's probably still pretty bad and constructed, but yeah, I think limited-wise, this is going to be more playable than people realize. Okay, Shivan Branchburner. This is red, and 5. Uncommon, it's a 4/4 dragon. Has Convoke, so, may not cost 7, might be less. Has Flying and Haste. So, I remember, was it Volcanic Dragon? I think it was first printed in maybe Mirage or something, and it's been reprinted many times. That is a 6 mana Flying Haste 4/4 dragon, and it doesn't have Convoke. I'm used to thinking of that card as being like on rate for limited. This is 1 more mana, but it has Convoke tacked on. So there's every possibility that you can get this out for like 5 or 4. If you have a 5 mana 4/4 Flying Haste, that is above rate. That is really strong. And if you get it down to 4 mana or less, it's ridiculous. I think this is a really powerful card. I think this is a really good pick for red. Convoke or not, taking 1 mana off of this gets it down to being a Volcanic Dragon. Taking 2 mana off of it gets it down to the price of like Dragonwing Glider. I mean, you can't re-equip it like the Dragonwing Glider, but still, point remains. Really powerful, only takes 1 or 2 creatures to get it down to a reasonable price. And if you can do more than that, then it's absurd. Yeah, this might be one of the key red uncommons right here. Shivan Branchburner. Stoke the Flames. 2 red, 2 colorless, uncommon, instant, has Convoke, so it could cost all the way down to 0. Stoke the Flames deals 4 damage to any target. This feels like pretty strong removal here. It's a nice trick you can do when you're tapped out but you have a wide board. I think that is a situation that can come up in this format. I feel like ground stalls are going to occur. Any target is nice. You can burn the opponent's face for 4. That's a pretty big hit to the face. Burn out a planeswalker. 4 damage to a creature will kill a lot of what you need. Not everything, but a pretty wide swath of targets. And it can help you flip a battle. 4 damage might be enough to flip some of the smaller battles that only have like 4 defense. So, yeah, and I think if you do play this for 4 mana, it's fair. That's the price of, what is it, Lightning Blast? Yeah, I think it's called Lightning Blast. It's 4 mana instant, deals 4 to any target. And this has Convoke. It's got double red pips, but Convoke can make that part cheaper too. Yeah, I think this is just pretty good. I think it's going to be pretty great in red. I like it for proactively going after battles, but it's just good in general. Okay, Thrashing Frontliner. Red and a colorless. It's a common. It's a 2/2 Phyrexian Viashino. It's got trample. Whenever it attacks a battle, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So it's a 3/3 trampler when it's attacking battles. And I think if you have it in your deck for that purpose, then it's good. 3/3 trampler for 2, that's at least going to be able to attack in, make some trades with the opponent pretty nicely. If you have battles to flip. If you don't have battles to flip, then I think this is very mediocre. Yeah, you could boost it, put some equipment on it, has trample, but if you're not going after battles, then I don't know that this is what you want. Sometimes you need something to fill the curve, but without a battle theme, I think this card's not going to match up well with a lot of what's in the format. Okay. Trailblazing Historian. Red and a colorless, common, 1/3, human shaman. It has haste. Can tap to give another target creature haste until end of turn. It's good. Yeah, it's a good early blocker, and you can turn any creature in your deck into a surprise attacker. I think that's good at any stage of the game. I think it's got a relevant early game body, and it's got an ability that's going to be nice into the latest levels of the game. It won't be the best top deck in the late game, but it'll make your other top decks good after that. Yeah, I like Trailblazing Historian. I think it's going to be pretty potent. Volcanic Spite, red and a colorless, common, instant. Deals 3 damage to target creature, planeswalker, or battle. You can put a card from your hand on the bottom of your library if you do draw a card. This is pretty fair for the mana cost. I like that it's instant speed. I like that it can hit battles. And you can, put a card away for later. Kind of lets you cycle something. Yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty good role player in this format. Now, unfortunately, I think there's going to be some big stuff that this won't kill on its own. Might have to, damage it in combat, finish it off, or you know, hit it with 2 removal spells, that kind of thing. But I think up onto the mid game, this is going to be a pretty good chunk of removal. Helps smooth out your draws. And smoothing out the draws is going to be nice for getting you the cards you need into the mid and late game. So overall, I think this is pretty good. Okay, War Trained Slasher, red and 3 colorless. It's a 4/3 common Wolverine dinosaur. It's a neat creature type. Has menace. That's pretty good. And whenever it attacks a battle, double its power. Okay. 4/3 menace for 4 is already pretty good. You know, you could pump it further with, you know, equipment or backup, things like that. And against a battle in particular, you know, if your opponent blocks this thing, they can probably kill it. It only has 3 toughness, but it will probably kill both of the things that block it. You know, 8 power menace going after a battle. What do? Do you just let them flip the battle, or do you send 2 of your creatures to die to keep them from flipping the battle? Tough choice. I think this card is playable if you don't have battles. If you do have battles, then I think it's pretty nice. And Rin's Resolve. Red and a colorless, sorcery, common. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until end of your next turn, you may play those cards. So, you know, functional reprint here. It's nice to get functional reprints. It's a pretty good spell. Main thing to keep in mind about these exile effects, don't play your land for the turn until you've done this. If you hit 2 lands, then you could play 1 this turn and 1 next turn. The other thing to keep in mind is the higher your mana curve goes, the later you should wait in the game until you cast this. Because if you have 5 and 6 drops in your deck, or higher than that, then you don't want to play this on turn 2. You might just end up exiling some of your late game cards and be unable to cast them. And then you don't really get the card advantage out of this card. So, kind of depends on your mana curve a bit. Overall, it's going to be a very playable card. Alright, let's jet on down to the double face cards for red. We've got Harried Artisan. It's red and 2 colorless, uncommon. It's a 2/3 human artificer, has haste. You can pay 3 and a white Phyrexian to transform, only as a sorcery. So you can do that the very next turn. It turns into a Phyrexian Skyflayer. So it's a red-white creature, 3/4, Phyrexian Artificer, has flying and haste. So it's got haste on the front and the back side. So if you had 6 or 7 mana, then this will, you know, have haste when you play it and flip it. 3/4 flyer is going to be a pretty relevant body, I think. The ground is going to stall, and I think flying is going to be one of the ways you try to get through to land damage in the format. 2/3 for 3 is a very forgettable stat line, but it's a decent blocker. You know, if your opponent happens to be open, it can come in with haste. But I think mostly it's going to be like a decent blocker. Hold off some 2/2 incubator tokens, stuff like that. Then you can transform it. And suddenly it's a very relevant flyer. Yeah, I think this is a good card. Alright, Invasion of Mercadia. Red and a colorless. Uncommon. It's a battle. Has 4 defense. When Invasion of Mercadia enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. So that's playable on its own. It doesn't help you to flip this battle in any way. Although red has a lot of good direct damage effects. Creatures that are good at attacking battles. So I think you could do a reasonable job of flipping this over. And early on, you know, it's going to help filter your cards, find you more of what you need. So when you do 4 damage to this and flip it over, you get a Chiron Flamewright. So Goblin Spell Shaper. It's a 3/3. You can pay red, 2 colorless, tap, discard a card, and you get 2 1/1 blue and red elemental creature tokens. And creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste. So just on his own, when you use this ability, he's going to put 4 power on the battlefield with haste. It's going to pump all of your other creatures too. You have to discard a card to do it, but this is a way to go wide. You just start discarding lands and just going wide. You get a power pump every time he does it as well. So overall, I think this card's pretty nice. It's got a playable front side. You know, helps filter your cards, find what you need. Then it turns into just a real threatening card that can go wide and pumps the team. Seems good. Yeah, I like it. Invasion of Regatha. Red and 2 colorless. It's an uncommon battle. It's got 5 defense. When it ETBs, deals 4 damage to another target battle or opponent, and 1 damage to up to 1 target creature. So, 1 damage to a creature is a little bit hard to work with. You might find a target, or you might play this post-combat and do the last point to something that blocked. This is good at either burning out the opponent or, more importantly, flipping a battle. Right, so 4 damage is enough to flip the Invasion of Mercadia. So if you play Invasion of Mercadia and the next turn you play Invasion of Regatha, you just flip your Invasion of Mercadia. That's cool. They're both uncommons. That's not an unreasonable play pattern. You might even kill a little creature with 1 toughness. And then Invasion of Regatha, once you deal 5 to it, flips into Disciples of the Inferno. 4/4 with Prowess, that's a very threatening creature. If a non-creature source would deal damage to a creature, battle, or opponent, it deals that much +2 instead. Yeah, the backside of this card is very threatening. The only thing it does to help you flip itself is if the opponent had a 1 toughness thing that could block, you could burn it out with the front side of the card, and that would help you attack in to flip this. So it's got a minor amount of assistance in flipping, but it's got a really nice front side on the card and a really good payoff on the back side. The front side of the card does its best work if you have some battles. I don't think it's nearly so good if you don't have battles to be flipping. Alright, Kinra Spell Spear. Red and a colorless. This is an uncommon 2/2 Jackal Warrior. Has trample and prowess. That's reasonably threatening for a spells deck. You can pay 3 colorless and a blue Phyrexian to transform it, only as a sorcery. It turns into Gitaxian Spellstalker. 3/3 Phyrexian Jackal, trample, ward 2, prowess. So every non-creature spell you play on the backside is going to pump it up 2. So a non-creature spell would make it a 5/5 trample ward 2. Yeah, if you're in a prowess deck, spells deck, then this is very threatening. You know, pretty good on the front side, very threatening on the back side. I like it. Not every deck's going to want it. Pyretic Prankster, red and a colorless, 2/1 Devil, common. So 2/1 for 2 is a very forgettable creature, but you can pay 3 colorless and a black Phyrexian to transform it only as a sorcery. Turns into Glistening Goremonger, which is a red-black 3/2 Phyrexian Devil. And when it dies, each opponent sacrifices an artifact or creature. So I think this is probably for like a Rakdos Aristocrats build. The front side of it, it's a forgettable enough creature that if you need to sacrifice something, you don't exactly mind. But it pays you a lot more value if you flip it to the backside and then sacrifice it. Or trade it in combat. Because then, not only do you get value from the trade or the sacrifice, but then the opponent also sacrifices an artifact or creature. Just kind of grind out some value. I don't think every deck wants this card. I think Aristocrats probably does. Just any old red deck. Yeah, if you flip it into the 3/2, the opponent doesn't want to attack into it very much. So that's something. But yeah, I think it's mostly exciting for Aristocrats. Alright, that brings us to the end of red. So join me next time. I'll be going through green, and after that I'm going to go through colorless and multicolored. And until then, stay cool.